Hey y'all, welcome to the workshop and happy Pride Month. I'm Philippe, more commonly known as Positivebot or the Smile Workshop. I usually upload one video a month around the 27th, but since this is informational, I'm posting it at the beginning. There will be no gameplay video this month. So, for those of you who don't know, I and most of my friends are a part of the LGBT+ community. Since schools don't talk about LGBT+ history or label definitions, most people don't know much about the community, especially if they're not a part of it. In this video, I'll be talking about different identities within the LGBT+ community and the basic history of the movement, at least in America. The pinned comment below gives timestamps for each part of the video. Whether you're watching this to better explain things to your parents or to expand your own knowledge, I hope you enjoy and learn something. Also, the workshop is a safe place for everyone. Please don't shame any identities in the comments or joke about killing all straights. I understand where the joke comes from, but it has no place in the comments of this video. Thanks. If you like this kind of content and you want an LGBT+ creator to follow, subscribe. And the video took a lot of work, so I'll appreciate it if you leave a like. Now, for the first part, I'm going to be talking about the history. I will be mostly listing dates and events in this section, but I will not be going that far in depth of each event. I will first be talking about same-sex marriage, and then we'll go on to talk about trans history. So, to start with, being homosexual isn't new. In places such as ancient Greece, being in a same-sex relationship is very common. The god Apollo, who is the Greek god of the sun and music, was considered to have many female and male lovers. In America, most people know about the Stonewall Riots, or they've at least heard the name. The Stonewall Riots are considered the first significant steps towards gay rights, but smaller victories began before the riots. In 1906, potentially the first open gay American novel with a happy ending, E. May Memorandum by Edward Prime Stevenson was published. Although the novel isn't the first with gay characters, it is the first to be published where the gay couple is happily united in the end. In 1924, the first LGBT rights organization was founded by Harry Gerberin in Chicago called the Society for Human Rights. The group existed for a few months before disbanding under police pressure. In 1955, the first lesbian political and social organization in the U.S. was created. It was named the Daughter of Identities after a lesbian-themed song by a French artist. The Daughter of Identities promoted awareness and equality through events and activities such as hosting public forums on homosexuality and participating in research activities. In 1957, a psychologist named Evelyn Hooker published a study called The Adjustment of the Male Overt Homosexual. Within this study, she set out to prove that homosexual men have the same mental health as heterosexual men. The judges that looked over her test results had an inability to distinguish the homosexual from the heterosexual records, proving what Hooker set out to accomplish. This study became a major factor in the American Psychiatric Association in removing homosexuality from its Handbook of Disorders in 1973. The first Supreme Court case ruling in favor of LGBT+ issues was in 1958. One, the Homosexual Magazine, a lesbian, gay, and bisexual publication, was considered too obscene by the U.S. Post Office and the FBI to be delivered through mail. The publishers of the magazine sued, and originally lost both the first case and the appeal. The case was taken up by a young, straight Californian attorney fresh out of law school by the name of Eric Julber. Julber ended up winning the case, and although it got little attention at the time, it was still a major victory for the LGBT+ community. The Stonewall Riots took place in 1969. Stonewall Inn, a gay bar and inn in New York City, was subject to a police raid, which turned violent as the patrons and local sympathizers began to riot against the police. The police raid was legally justified, but the members of the LGBT+ community of New York were tired of the police targeting gay clubs and started the riot. The protesting was stopped that night by the deployment of New York City's riot police, but not forever, as several days of demonstrations in New York followed the Stonewall Riots. In 1970, the first LGBT Pride Parade was held in New York. In 1983, Massachusetts Representative Gary Studs revealed he was gay on the floor of the House, becoming the first openly gay member of Congress. In 2003, homosexuality was decriminalized nationwide in America. In 2008, California passed a same-sex marriage law, declaring that banning same-sex marriage was unconstitutional. In 2011, the United States ended the ban on gay individuals in the military. in 2013, same-sex marriages was given federal recognition. On Celebrate Bisexuality Day, the White House held a closed-door meeting with almost 30 bisexual advocates so they could meet with the government officials and discuss issues of specific importance to the bisexual community, marking the first bi-specific event ever hosted by the White House. In 2015, same-sex marriage became legal nationwide in America. Although the LGBT+ community has won the right to same-sex marriage, the fight for equality is far from over. Trans history starts just as far back as same-sex marriage does. There are Sumerian and Akkadian texts from about 4,500 years ago that document transgender individuals. There are documents of trans people from ancient Greece as well. Before Western contact, many Native American tribes had trans and third-gender individuals as part of their tribes. Thomas Seton Hall was an indentured servant from Virginia during the 1630s. Hall was known as both a man and a woman and adopted roles and clothing of both. In 1971, a trans man by the name of Alan L. Hart was one of the first to have a hysterectomy and a gonectomy. A hysterectomy is a surgery that removes the uterus, and a gonectomy is a surgery that removes the ovaries. In the 1900s, Trans Day of Remembrance was established. It's observed on November 20th of each year and is a day for remembering those who lost their lives due to trans-related violence. In the mid-2000s, a Black trans woman named Monica Roberts created a blog and magazine called Transgriot. She grew up without any trans role models, especially none of color. She created the Transgriot to show accurate media coverage of the issues transgender individuals face. In 2006, Kim Coco Mwata was the first openly gay trans person to be elected statewide office in Hawaii. In 2017, a woman named Danica Roem was the first openly trans person elected to state legislature when she won a seat in the Virginia House. In 2016, the Obama administration put laws in place that protected transgender students, the most well-known allowing trans students to use bathrooms and locker rooms matching their gender identity. Unfortunately, in the beginning of 2017, the Trump administration removed those protections and put rules to protect healthcare providers who discriminate against trans patients. They also issued a series of orders against the employment of trans people by the Department of Defense. Sorry if that was a little boring. Now we're on to the more fun part, LGBT+ identities. I know being straight and cis doesn't make you a part of the LGBT+ community, but I do plan on mentioning what each term means and the flag associated with them, as they are still valid and important identities. Gender and sexuality are divided into multiple categories. Since I ended with trans history, I'll start with gender identities. First of all, you have to understand the difference between biological sex and gender. Sex is determined by the genitals of the person, and while gender defines someone's pronouns. Gender identity and gender expression are different as well. Expression is how someone chooses to present themselves, and it doesn't have to relate to gender identity. For example, a guy painting his nails, which is traditionally seen as feminine, is still a man. Sorry if that's confusing, just remember that sex equals genitals and identity equals pronouns. The main different biological sexes, because yes, there's actually more than two, are male, female, and intersex. There's obviously a more in-depth description of all of these, and if anyone wants to know, leave a comment and I might talk about it. I'm working on the assumption that you know what male and female mean, so I'm not going to explain those. Intersex is what people who are born with sexual characteristics that don't fit the typical man or woman characteristics are called. Now, onto gender. Gender is divided into two umbrella terms. An umbrella term is one that holds many other terms, and you will be hearing that word a lot. Cis and trans. Cis means identifying with the gender you're born as, aka the one that correlates to your sex. The male, or he/him pronouns, and female, or she/her pronouns. Some people consider intersex individuals as part of the LGBT community because of this, but others don't. Trans is the opposite. If you're trans, you don't identify with the gender that you're born as. Trans is an umbrella term as well, under which we have the binary and non-binary. Binary is male and female. An FTM, or trans man, is someone who identifies as a male, uses he/him pronouns, but was born female. An MTF, or trans woman, is someone who identifies as female, uses she/her pronouns, but was born male. Non-binary is basically everything else. There are many different identities under the non-binary umbrella, and I will not be talking about all of them, just the most common. Many people who are non-binary simply call themselves non-binary and don't have a specific label, but it's fine if you do. Agender is the absence of gender, and those who identify with agender tend to use they/them pronouns. A demigirl is someone who will use she/they pronouns, and a demiboy is someone who uses he/they pronouns. Bigender individuals use two different pronouns. These pronouns can be the same as demi, or they can be she/him. Trigender individuals use all three pronouns. Gender-fluid people also use all three pronouns, but the pronouns they use vary day to day. It's like a dial that's twisted at random. Being gender-fluid isn't someone waking up and deciding to make things complicated. They cannot help the way they are, and it's not a bad thing. All trans individuals experience gender dysphoria. Gender dysphoria is defined as a conflict between someone's gender identity and the sex they are given at birth, but it's so much more than that. Everyone has different levels of dysphoria, and while I say the word uncomfortable, it can range from unbearable to a slight bother. Some are just mildly uncomfortable, like walking around with an underwear wedgie, while others can feel violently sick. Some may have urges to rip their hair out or try to cut their genitals off. These sudden, violent urges are very dangerous. Also, please note that I am simply doing this to inform. Do not use this video to try and diagnose yourself. There are multiple types of gender dysphoria. Body dysphoria is when someone is uncomfortable with their physical body. Body dysphoria is the reason trans men bind. Social dysphoria is when someone is uncomfortable with the way they are seen socially. This usually falls in line with clothing and gender expression. For example, if a trans woman is in the closet, meaning she's not out publicly as a woman, she may not have more traditional female clothing. Staying home, she may be more comfortable wearing a quote-unquote man's t-shirt, but she hates wearing it in public. The third type is mind dysphoria. Mind dysphoria is when someone's emotions and thoughts are at odds with their gender identity. This can be as small as someone accidentally misgendering themselves and feeling uncomfortable, or a constant depression surrounding their identity. Alright, now on to sexual orientation. Sexual orientation is defined as the attraction people feel towards one another. The attraction isn't always sexual. There are multiple different types of attraction, these being sexual, romantic, and aesthetic. There are more, of course, but I will only be referencing these. Sexual attraction is as it sounds, meaning the attraction you feel towards someone is sexual in nature. Romantic attraction means the attraction you feel towards someone is romantic in nature. That doesn't mean you don't want to have a sexual relationship with someone. Aesthetic attraction means the attraction you feel towards someone based on appearance. This attraction doesn't have to lead to relationships. It can also be when you see someone you think is cool and are jealous of their appearance. Sexual orientation is divided into two different umbrellas: homosexual and heterosexual. Being heterosexual, or straight, is when you are of a binary gender, whether that be cis or trans, and have the attraction to someone of the opposite gender. Homosexuals has many different labels under this umbrella term. The L of LGBT+ stands for lesbian, which is when a woman or someone of the non-binary genders is attracted to another woman. The G stands for gay, which sometimes functions as an umbrella term for anyone who isn't straight, but it primarily means a man attracted to another man. The B is actually an umbrella term as well. Many of these terms significantly overlap, but the distinction matters to some people. Under this umbrella is bi, which is what the B technically stands for. It means attraction to two or more genders. Another identity under this is pan, which is an attraction to all genders. Hi, this is an editor's note. There are currently two flags for the pan identity because the old flag was created by someone who is kind of problematic. So some people have switched to using a new one. I'll put both of them on screen, but you can pick which one to use, honestly, if you identify with that. Or you can do more research into why they're problematic and choose it based off of that. Sorry. Now back onto the video. There are more, of course, but those are the most common. Now, something that is its own kind of bubble is the allo-ace spectrum. Allosexual means you experience sexual attraction. Asexual, or ace, means you do not. For some people, the idea of having sex can make them physically ill, while others simply don't care for it. Asexual people can have sex if they choose to, and it doesn't make them less ace. Alloromantic people experience romantic attraction. Being aromantic means you do not. Many aromantic people experience love, but not in a partner relationship way. Many remain single, or enter relationships because society pressures them to. Every year, there's a debate whether asexual and aromantic people belong in the community. Whether they do or not, they are still valid identities. That's all I have for today. Thanks for making it to the end of the video. If you decide to check out any of my other content, please be warned they do contain swearing. I don't plan on having any swears in my informational videos so everyone can access them. I hope you all have a wonderful Pride Month, and stay safe.